So good afternoon, East Cleveland. How's everybody? Okay, I'd like to thank you all for coming out. Thank everyone who's on Zoom for joining us via Zoom. I'd like to thank our presenters, OHM and Cleveland Water. As you know, OHM is our engineering consultants that we have had since 2017, 2018, my first year. I want to start off with a little bit of housekeeping. Many of you have the agenda, and I asked you to take a look at the agenda, take a look at all of the legislation that is within council's purview, needing to be acted upon. And if you have any questions or concerns, we will get to Q&A at the end of this. And there's plenty of time. So the reason for this meeting, those of you who've been around City Hall, been around council, been around the meetings, particularly over the last few months, well, geez, all year, there haven't really been many council meetings. I myself have been to a couple where they would spend more time before the meeting started, and then when the meeting started, they would literally get up and leave. We're not here to bash council. In fact, Councilman Martin and Councilor Stevenson are here, so thank you for coming. Last week, we had a meeting with the concerned pastors, and Council President Stevenson and I actually met with the concerned pastors. Councilor Stevenson and I actually met with the concerned pastors. President has asked me to talk a little louder, maybe a month ago. And a lot of the concerns that we expressed to the concerned pastors were again expressed last Tuesday. As last Tuesday, I met with the concerned pastors. I met with Councilor Gowdy and Councilor Bahoviak with another group of concerned pastors. And one of the things I didn't know is a concerned pastor said they go back to Arnoir or maybe even before that, in the sense of being a voice of reason, mediation between council and the administration, and sometimes between council themselves. So it's welcoming to have that sort of mediation. Hey, let's sit down, let's talk. At the end of the day, it's about the city, and we're here to do the work of the city, to move the city forward. Please, we have another counselor coming. This is Councilor Gowdy, who actually met with me and the concerned pastors last week. So this is a public meeting. It's a public meeting. I just asked that not pass whatever he's passing out. Please, everyone's sitting down there. We're going to present to you this way. No one's up here. Please. Okay. Please. No sitting in the judge's seat or anything. Yes. Sitting. There's no counselors up here. We're presenting this way. Please. Please. This is a public meeting. Please have a seat down here, please.
Please, this is a public meeting. I'm the president of council.
And all the council people are sitting down there. They're not sitting up here.
Excuse me. I'm the council clerk.
This is a special council meeting.
This is a council.
This is a mayor's meeting? Okay. I'm not. Please. Listen, can we not, kind sir, can you,
could you go and get the paperwork, Justin Anderson?
kind sir, can I finish? I want to finish my opening remarks. Councilor Gowdy, can you please have a seat?
Oh, it's council meeting.
So one of the reasons we're having this is because at the council meetings, this occurs. Right now, in the charter, I am allowed to call a special meeting. This is a town hall meeting. Doesn't matter. We're having the meeting. Can you please? Councilor Gowdy, can you please have a seat?
No, this is a council meeting.
So you're going to disrupt my meeting?
No,
You're not going to let me have my meeting? Counselor, you're not going to let me have my meeting? Gonna sit in the judge's seat again.
I can sit where.
What kind of mentality is that? I'm sorry.
And that's fine, Mayor, but he calling the wrong meeting. Calling the wrong meeting. He can.
Please.
He can have.
My lady, thank you. Thank you. Let's, yes.
He can have a mayor meeting or a town hall meeting, but he cannot have. He cannot have a council meetings, Mayor.
Okay, so per charter, this is a mayor's meeting.
No,
Right.
it's not.
I call a meeting of city council. There's legislation on here, but there'll be no legislative actions. So there'll be no legislative actions. The legislation that is on there is just to show you what's in council's purview to be acted upon, right? This is a mayor's meeting.
No, it's not.
Now, As I was saying, last Tuesday, the concerned pastors were kind enough to bring us together to try to mediate council and the administration to help us work better together to move this city forward. There were a number of things, issues that were put on the table from my end and from Councilor Gowdy and Councilor Bahoviak's end as to what we could do to work together. One of the things I told the concerned pastors and the two counselors there, the reason for this is because of the meetings they've been having all year. I owe the residents, you, an explanation as to what we've been working on, where it's at, to give you updates so that you can hear what your administration is doing on your behalf to move this city forward. There's no problem with having this meeting. The gentlemen that are here and the ladies that are here from OHM are going to come back out tomorrow and they're going to give the same presentation, right, to city council. The beautiful thing about it, many of us have been around. Often council needs to hear something over and over. And I'm the same way. Sometimes I need to hear something 2 or 3 times, right, before I can fully grasp it. I can ask all the questions that I need to ask in order to best understand it. Sometimes there's nothing wrong with information overload, right? So the meeting today is to bring information to you, the residents, and to bring it to the counselors. There's 3 counselors here. So now, at some point, we're gonna have to ask you to leave. If you can't, just let the meeting go, please. Please. Last week, and I see a lot of familiar faces. Last week, there was a meeting, a NOAA meeting, right? Last Monday.
Clerk alone.
There was,
My clerk alone, police officer. No, you need to be removed. Well, then be respectful. He's trying to have. He's not on the council time. This is not.
Please. If ladies and gentlemen. Yes, okay, let's move forward. Let's move forward. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, I was at the NOAA's meeting last week. I was at NOAA's meeting last week at the church, right? And I was at the meeting last year. We're not gonna go into what was said and what was not said. He did state that he's taking the job, I believe, today at NLI. I would like to wish him well. At NLI, I really loved the fact that he said, and I quote, "Wherever I go, East Cleveland and NOAA go," right? And we've always stated, we are NOAA. We are NOAA. As I look at Councilman Nate Martin, as much work as we've done with NOAA for this city, we are NOAA. Part of the reason I'm bringing it up to congratulate him. The second reason is, a few months ago, there was this, hey, community involvement, community input, community this, and this, right? He stated in that meeting about the community involvement that we have been working on for years, right? So here's what I'd like to say, because there are other opportunities for you to get involved in guiding the rebuilding, the revitalization of this city. We'll talk a little bit about it. One of them is the Reimagine Euclid Avenue that's being conducted through NOACA and the RTA, right? There'll be times where we're gonna need a community meeting to hear what it should be like. So if you could start thinking about that now, many of you know, when they first came in with the Euclid corridor to Healthline, they had it laid out the Windermere, right? And this goes back a couple administrations. And for some reason, they stopped at that bridge. In fact, for some reason at 105, it changed kind of layout and feel. So the Reimagine Euclid corridor is from 105 to the Windermere. I need you there so that they can hear your voices as to what it is we need here in East Cleveland. So that's one opportunity yet for more community input. Also, the Metro Parks, Renee is not down here, but as we continue moving forward with the negotiations in the Metro Parks to take over the management of Forest Hill Park, we're gonna have community input as to some of the things they'd like to see, right? Please. And I know no one here is gonna do it, but NOAC and the RTA and the Metro Parks, there's no grocery store, right? There's no bowling alley, okay? We have to understand what it is they're charged with. And then so when we say what we would like to see, programming of the Metro Parks, some of the same things they're doing at Kane Park, awesome in the summer, right? What they did at Edgewater, Euclid, imagine, right? Now, when you're talking about the RTA and the Reimagine Euclid, I was at a meeting where they were talking about the return on investment and the investment they spurred in redoing Euclid Avenue from downtown, right? All the investment that then sprung up on Euclid Avenue. One sector in particular is at 55th and Euclid, between Euclid and Chester, where they put the Daves, right? You see the spur of growth that has happened there. Businesses, right? New residency. So think along those lines when we get there. Now, I wanted to show you something, and these documents are your documents. However, I would ask that if you want a copy of the document, let us know and we can get you a copy of it. So I don't have the 2003 master plan from Cleveland State University. They were part of it. The relevance of that plan, and as many of you know because you live here, the plan covers all of this. But what it's saying, take away as tenants, jobs, new residents, save the historic houses, the historic structures, right? Create new houses, clean out the houses and the vacant and abandoned property. So that has not changed. However, East Cleveland land use study, right? This was just finished. This is not actually the finished copy. It has one more review and it will be, this is done by Cuyahoga Planning. Land use study, right? That's something you need when you're going for redevelopment and revitalization. Here's the document that we did with NOAA on the cusp back in 2015 with Case Western Reserve and Neighborhood Progress, Inc., right? I was there. Here's the document we did with Cleveland State, divisioning. Many of you remember the Q&A up at McGregor, filling out the forms. Here's one that I'm really excited about. KAU, KUA, Kronberg. Who remembers coming to council and picking diagrams of what the new neighborhood could be? Housing, mixed use, housing, townhouses. Here is their report, right? Now you start putting all of these together, you have the same sections that are in a master plan, except this is better, right? Because this is more current. And a lot of times this will be targeted towards the area in which needs or is set for redevelopment. And we've said it 100 times, our best hope for redevelopment to bring in new residents is the area closest to Case Western Reserve. And that's where we are set for redevelopment. Those of you who were at the last meeting got to hear from Dennis Roberts of the Cuyahoga County Land Reutilization Corp, County Land Bank, and you've seen the work that they're doing at the Mickey's building. Okay, so that was my housekeeping. We have a number of things on the agenda with corresponding legislation. I promise not to keep you longer than an hour and a half. So whatever we don't cover today, we will try and cover at a later meeting. So without further ado, I would like to bring up Alex, Russ, and OHM in Cleveland Water. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. East Cleveland, some brief introductions, and Mayor, thank you, kind of highlighted it, but my name is Russ Critelli. I'm the principal for the Cleveland office of OHM Advisors. We're roughly a 700 employee architect, engineers, planners firm. I'm also here with my colleague, Alex Latowski, who's our lead engineer client rep for the city of East Cleveland. I just want to give you a background that OHM Advisors, we are under agreement with the city of East Cleveland as their municipal advisors. We call it technical or trusted advisor, and we do similar service for roughly approximately 15 other cities around Northeast Ohio. So we do this, and this I'd say we look for, following our mission, which is advancing communities. We look for opportunities to work with the mayor's office, council, and the community on infrastructure needs, capital improvement plans, et cetera, and looking for funding sources. So I'm going to give some high level, hopefully it's up on the PowerPoint, and there are copies here if you'd like. This is just high level information, as the mayor alluded to better bring forward what we're charged with and what we're working with your community to help move forward on. As that's coming up. Yep. So slide number 2. I'll wait. I'll give it a minute here. Oh boy, Orchard. Not that I don't remember, but it's hard to say the last name. Orchard, McClintic, and Hills.
Say that again.
Orchard, McClintic, and Hills. Don't quote me on if I spelled the McClintic correctly. Those gentlemen are the founders of the company in 1962. So we've been around a while, and we serve the Midwest basically. But we have offices in Cleveland, Akron, and Columbus in Ohio. We are architects, engineers, planners, and construction management. We have 18 offices throughout the Midwest, but we're local right down the Euclid corridor here in Midtown. Yes, we do a little bit of everything. Yep. So, like I said, I'll do some overview and then pass this off to Alex on specific initiatives. But this slide here, unfortunately, the title, I'll just give you the background. This says a program budget by project type and construction year. And of course, what we're trying to show is here, as I said, our role here is, besides doing or identifying projects, maybe delivering on plans, more importantly, or just as important, is how do we find funding? And this is, every community is up against those same challenges. How do we package up as many funding sources as possible, and where do they align? And in this case, these are approximate by calendar year where your infrastructure dollars are going by the project type. And I'm going to get to another slide that shows you how we package the money up. But this is showing you, again, as a scale, you could see 2023 is a very, very aggressive year with infrastructure needs, and a good thing. And then 2024 and 25, these are early projections, but I'm sure we will develop the capital program going forward, which will change that. On the next slide. And this is the one where we're trying to, or we show the annual program funding by the different funding sources. And this is very, very important, of course, as we have all those infrastructure needs. On the bottom of the legend here and color coded, it might be tough to see, but we have everything from Cleveland Water Department, member community infrastructure program through Northeast Regional Sewer, Cleveland or Cuyahoga County, Ohio Public Works Commission, the Water Pollution Prevention Program, Community Development Block Grants, Cleveland Water Department, et cetera. And what this is just trying to show is the more outside money we could bring in, right, and fill the gap, the better. And so if we've got a capital program of 1 million or 2 million, we're going to try to find with partners, not always just on us, but we'll work at all our resources to find those, utilize those funding sources that are available by program, by timeline, et cetera. I want to be respectful of everyone's time here. If we go to the next slide. So this is, this slide is trying to, I keep saying trying, hopefully we've done a job of communicating and sharing. This is project timelines. What we're trying to show is, again, color coded at the bottom, by project, when these projects happen. Hopefully I'm speaking clear enough. And I guess the critical piece of information is we have some stars in the boxes, and that is as obviously important to both the city being willing to move forward with projects, and that means, of course, pursuing funding. So the stars are, which are, I guess, key here, I want to point out is we have stars that show from a timeline standpoint and color coded. There's going to be legislation needed. For example, we need to pursue Cleveland Water Department, Northeast Regional Sewer, and we need legislation or the council to say, yes, we want to pursue that funding. Or there's legislation going to be coming before council for construction phase services. So that's kind of high level of that. Next slide. I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Alex, who's working on a day-to-day basis with the mayor's office and the leadership here.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you, Mayor, for having me, for having us. And thank you, council, and all the rest of the residents who are here. So just to pick up where Russ left off, this is a map of the city highlighting where there are infrastructure projects that have recently been completed or are currently in construction or in the design or planning phases. So we'll go into more detail on all of that, but this is just to give you an overview of where things have been going on in the city. We can go to the next one. So one thing that's happening right now is in Forest Hill Park along Superior Avenue, the Superior Hill Park Improvements Project for putting in a basketball court and potentially also tennis court with lines on it for pickleball, because I heard there's a lot of enthusiasm for pickleball here and all over the country. That is currently out to bid. So we're going to be getting some bids back from construction companies, from contractors to do this work. And this project is funded in part with a grant from Sparkling Ice. And so they're really excited to be doing this partnership with the city. So this is just a little summary of the funding and the schedule for this project. That's one thing that's coming up that's going to have to go before council when the bids come in from the contractors. There'll have to be an award of that bid. So that's legislation that'll be coming up soon. Go to the next one. This is For Hayden, there's a whole bunch being planned for Hayden right now. There's a lot of need there. So currently negotiating with securing getting all the funding in place. There's already Cleveland Water Department funding for this. There's also already Ohio Public Works funding for the road. And then we're kind of finalizing funding coming from the Ohio EPA to do sewer for this as well. So it'll be, oh goodness, all of, excuse me, all of the things at the same time, water, road, and sewer, so that we're putting new road on top of new infrastructure underground. So that's super exciting project. And there will at some point be some legislation needed for moving forward with that. Go to the next one. All right, so as I mentioned, and as Russ mentioned, at a couple different points along these infrastructure project timelines, legislation is needed in order to move forward. So the first part of the project timeline when that's needed is during the design or funding phase. And so in order to move forward with the design for the target area, there will be funding, or I'm sorry, there'll be legislation needed at some point. Same for both phase one of that project, which that will be for doing the design work, and then phase two, in order to keep this project moving next year, we need to apply for funding from the sewer district. So legislation will be needed really soon in order to approve going after that funding. So I'm putting together that application, but I need the city to tell me, go ahead and do it. Correct. Yes. Yes. So no design work can happen without awarding that contract, and legislation is needed for that. And no application can be submitted to the sewer district without the legislation and ordinance from council saying, we support moving forward with this funding application. So in the case of the funding application, that application is due May 15th. Which means I need to get all the documents together by May 1st. So that needs to happen this month. So if we went back to that slide with the schedules, there were a whole bunch of stars in April because there are a lot of things that need to happen in order to maintain that timeline, and that the funding application is definitely one that's non-negotiable. So this month. In the case of the design work to get phase one started, I mean, we were hoping to get that going, the beginning of the year. So that project just can't move forward without that. And I don't think that legislation is before council yet, but when that happens, that needs to be acted on quickly in order to maintain the project timeline for construction. That is right. I haven't gotten to that yet, but so that was just talking about design and funding phases of the projects. Projects that are going into the construction phase also require legislation in order to award the contract to the contractor. And so, yes, Forest Hill Streetlights is, and I agree with you. I've biked up that hill at night. It's a terrible choice. Yes, Forest Hill Streetlights is definitely one of those where we're still preparing the bid documents, but as soon as that goes out to bid and we get the bids from the contractors, there will be legislation needed to award that to the contractor. In the case of Shaw Avenue, that is already funded with Cleveland Water for the water main part of it. So that part needs to happen first, and that is 100% reimbursable by Cleveland Water. And that council may already have that legislation in front of them. That needs to get passed in order to award the contract to start construction on the water line for Shaw. With the tow yard and with the sewer improvements on Wheeler Avenue, those are both currently out to bid. So we'll be getting bids, we'll be opening bids, I think this week already, And then after that, there'll have to be a recommendation for award, and then the city will have to select the contractor to make the award to, and we'll need legislation in order to move forward with those projects. So that's everything. It's a lot. There's a lot coming up, but these are all, good infrastructure projects to be moving forward with. So I think we can move to the next one. Just to let everyone know what's currently under construction or coming up on construction, having already gone through that legislative process. The water line on Forest Hill Boulevard, and then also water lines on Savannah and Orinoco. Those are wrapping up. They're in the final phases. So those will be closing out soon. And then upcoming, the Euclid Avenue water main improvements is already under contract with contractor, and that work should be starting, that construction work should be starting as soon as the pipe comes in for the contractor. So that'll be really exciting to get those water mains replaced. They need it. And then so as soon as the water mains or the water main project on Forest Hill is wrapped up, then there'll be the paving after that. So I think that's it for current upcoming construction. Go to the next one. Mayor already mentioned the Reimagine Euclid study. So this is, as Mayor already said, this is a big deal. This is East Cleveland's opportunity to advocate for its interests along Euclid, of which there are many. There are a few people, including myself, on the steering committee for this study to advocate for the city and its interests. And there will be multiple stakeholders meetings that all of the organizations that represent the city's interests will be invited to. There'll be meetings held here in the city along the corridor, and the NOACA and the consultant running the study are looking for feedback about what is most important to take into account it as part of this study. And the outcome of this study should be a bunch of suggested projects that can happen along the corridor. And so that should set us up well to be able to go after transportation related grants, because we'll have all the data all gathered in one place to be able to say, hey, here's a good project. We already have the data behind it. Fund this, and we can start working on improving this corridor to better serve everyone in the city. So that's really exciting. Let's go with what's the next thing up there. Also already mentioned the planning study for the parks plan. I don't know that there's anything else I have to add to that the mayor hasn't already said. The next thing, and that's it. So that is a summary of all the exciting stuff that we have going on in the city right now from an infrastructure standpoint. We have Cleveland Water here to explain anything related to the Cleveland Water funded projects. And we're happy to answer any questions about anything that we talked about. So
I have a question.
yes.
In regards to water infrastructure, and I wanted for you and maybe Cleveland Water to talk in regards when Cleveland Water identifies water work that needs to be done. And then they come up with basically a price, goes out to bid, comes back, and then the contractor won't do the work without a change before the work even starts. He wants a change. I just wanted to hear a little bit about that.
So maybe just like if you guys could summarize the process for recommending projects to be done and then how the funding works. I think that would answer the mayor's question.
Okay.
Come up and do that. Better coming straight from the source.
I'm Greg Sattler, the manager of planning and hydraulics for the water department. It's Josh Pesic. He administers the suburban water main renewal program, which is the funding mechanism we use to replace water mains in in some of the 62 suburbs that we serve. So the process that starts is the city, their engineers submit an application to Cleveland Water to say, hey, I want to replace the water main on this street. We evaluate it based on criteria of number of breaks they have had, how much fire flow capacity is there, are there lead connections? And a big part of it is, are you going to package the water main replacement with other work, paving, sewer replacements? And if that's a yes, you get bonus points. So we evaluate all the criteria, give the project a score, and we do that twice a year. And then we rank all the applications by the high score to low, and we award based on how much funding we have available. We try to do $7.5 million every semester. So we do $15 million a year, 7.5 in the spring, 7.5 in the fall. In the Cleveland Water Department service area, which is Cleveland and 62 surrounding communities.
We have to share.
Yes, yeah, so yeah. East Cleveland is one of the parts, it signed the program and joined it, so they're one of the, I think, 30 that are eligible for the funding. Yes, it's, yeah, if you want, if you just, if your water main is only 20 years old and it's not breaking, it makes no sense to replace it. Versus the other one that's 75, 100 years old and has a lot of problems. So we try to evaluate which is the better project. And it's all compared to whoever applies that semester, that funding round. And then once that happens, we give the okay to the city / engineers. OHM designs it. We review it and approve it. They put it out for bid and get prices from the various bidding contractors. Then the city awards the contract and it proceeds.
You can explain the difference between like combined projects and not.
So there are two big categories of projects you can do. It's a water only project where it is just you replace the water main and that is it. When that happens, you don't get bonus points, so your overall score is a little lower, a little harder to get funded. But when you do that, we will pay 100% of your water main cost, because that contract that goes out to the construction companies is only water work. So we pay all that. You can also do a combined project, combine it with the water work with something else, paving, sewer work. Those are usually the two. When that happens, you get bonus points. So your project scores higher, more likely to get funded. But there's some, we reduce the amount of money that we're going to fund for pavement restoration. Because if you go to the county and say, can you come and pave my street? And they say yes, well, then we're not going to pay. We're going to let the county pay for that, so we can replace more water mains, which is our goal. We want to replace water mains, not pave streets. So we try to we minimize the payment if someone else is going to be paying for it.
Can you talk a little bit about where the industry is and the change orders that you've been seeing? I know we were hit with a couple change orders.
The biggest, I think, driver of change orders now is availability of metallic pipe. Of metallic pipe. The water main itself. I can give you a long talk about why, but suffice it to say Texas froze years ago, COVID hit, supply chain is all screwed up. It takes a while to get pipe. So if a contractor orders pipe today, most pipe manufacturers say, I will get you pipe in 6 to 8 months. And whatever my market price is in 6 to 8 months is what it's gonna cost you. Cost you $100 a foot today. It'll be more in 8 months, but I can't tell you how much more. And then they come back and say, hey, when I bid this project, when I quoted it in January, this was my cost. Now this is my cost. Can you cover that? Yes. Hopefully you're not waiting 8 months between ordering and delivery. But yeah, that's the main driver of the change orders. Yes.
Water main will be changed going that way, you're just gonna resurface?
Oh,
Have
what other
anything
half?
to do with The water lines in on Shaw,
So it's water and not road.
pardon?
So with Shaw, that's those are, so the way that Shaw is working, Greg explained that you can do combined projects or water only projects. And so Shaw is split into a water only project and a paving project. And so the water only project is 100% going to be reimbursed by Cleveland Water, and that'll get done first. And then the paving project is funded with a combination of funding from the Ohio Public Works Commission, which only was willing to provide a grant for part of the project. They were going to give a loan for the other part. The city's not accepting the loan. So the part of it's being covered by grant, part of it's going to be covered by CDBG funds, and part of it still needs to get figured out. So, the water project has to happen first. Got to put the water line in before you talk about paving, right? So, so that is a piece of legislation that is eventually going to be coming before council also, to say, where all those funds are coming from to do the paving project. We are not the designers on the paving project. Karpinski is. So that the design work will be managed by them. And then, looking at doing construction after the water main is done. Does that answer the question sufficiently?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. It's done.
Yeah, I was like, I know water mains.
Are there other questions for Cleveland Water or other questions about infrastructure generally? We'll be back
Okay.
tomorrow, so.
Right.
Thank you.
So. Yes, please.
Put the ordinance number.
Yes. So what I tried to do, because I didn't have that document on this document, I put the legislation number. So we don't have legislation for Superior yet. However, the Hayden legislation is there and the Shaw legislation is there. If I could go back to Shaw for a second. So some of you may remember this, some of you may not. I wish Charles was here. There was a big to-do about the loan coming in to do the road resurfacing on Shaw, right? The document came over and it was one of those e-signs, and I don't know if anybody's done an e-sign where you sign it, you push a button and it signs it. And I had got canned by the fiscal commission because technically we can't sign loans because we're in fiscal emergency. So it first has to be passed through council, and then it has to go to the fiscal commission to then okay it, and then I can sign this. I mean, we had to go back and I had to say, hey, look, I inadvertently signed it and it's no good because there's no legislation. So they kind of let us off with that. However, I've always maintained that it is still a good loan to make, because once we redo the water lines underneath, right, it's worth putting a brand new road. And we're talking Shaw from Hayden to Manhattan. right? And you see the new stadium and the amount of money and resources they put in there, it would just be awesome. Plus, over the years, we have in our partnership with the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, we have done from the bridge to Euclid. So that's resurfaced already. And this will be the final piece of Shaw. Mhm.
So this was fiber optic. But with that, can't, instead of doing a hot patch, can't you use some of the money from the American Rescue Act to pave some of the streets?
So that's a great question. And thank you for asking that, right? So a couple years ago, and I wish Ernest Smith was here, he'd tell you, a couple years ago, the contractors came in when they were doing Euclid Avenue, and they said, hey, the pipe's on its way. We need a change order. It was 300,000. And council went ballistic. Council would not increase the bid. And it wound up, right, not getting done. And then maybe a month or two later, Euclid and Chapman burst, right? Because of the pressure that was then created with the road that was put in, bust the pipe, and then something else bust, then something else bust, until speed up till last year, we put the bid back out through OHM. The bid came in, it's 2.5 million. The 2.5 million for Euclid Avenue. So it's 2.5 million that came out of ARPA. It's 2.5 million that came out of ARPA for Euclid. Now imagine we got a limited amount of funds in ARPA. We need to do a ton of different things with that money, right? So the answer is yes, but is that we're putting 2.5 into a road? Do we want to take more of those limited funds and put them into a road? We have a number of other needs, and OHM does a pretty good job in sourcing additional monies. So I'm still optimistic that some more monies will come through NOACA or through the sewer district, right? So that's it with that. Other questions?
Considered, will you consider, like maybe a couple streets going down Euclid as you're going toward the Cape, where you could actually take some of those older homes, revamp them, because that was Millionaires Row at one time, and then maybe lease them to Case or let Case buy them, and then they can provide their own security.
So that's a great idea. However, the city is not really in the business of taking homes and revamping them. Trust me, people call us all the time. Hey, I want to take this house. And it's like, it's one, most of them aren't our houses. By the time we get them, they're vacant land, or the house is in such disrepair that it doesn't make sense to even try to fix them. So the short answer is the city doesn't own most of those houses. Now, in that era, we have worked with the Cuyahoga County Land Reutilization Corp, who are development partners, to secure money downstate to then spruce up these houses. We're starting off Brightwood, Penrose, and eventually we're hoping to get money to come all the way to Euclid Avenue, especially on the south side of the street. And that's between Euclid and Forest Hills Avenue. Yeah, homeowners is who we're looking out for. There's a number of properties down there where people own, they're renting them out. We're looking out for homeowners. So, questions? Okay. Let's go to the next topic on the agenda. And I wanted the chief of fire left. So many of you have been with us for a while. We talked about the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District and the community cost share funding. And over the years, I've been lucky enough to write a number of grants that have gotten funded through the community cost share. And it's a reimbursable grant, meaning we have to pay it and then we submit the grant and they pay it back. So where we're coming up, legislation is Operation Clean Sweep. And I'm sorry, council left. I've been trying to, I hope many of you remember 2 years ago, we had the streets swept in the city. Yeah, so that was about 15,000. Last year, they wanted 22, and they were gonna start so late in the year that I said, there's no point in doing it if you're gonna start. So I tried to get ahead of it. They're at about 31, 32,000 to do the streets, right? So I said, hey, let's see if we can get it off of the general fund. So that's why I wrote the grant. The grant was approved. Now we need legislation. So if you could help me, help council to pass the legislation, we can have street sweeping in East Cleveland, right? And just as a sidebar, the street sweeping industry has went from over a dozen companies to companies eating up companies, eating up companies, eating up companies. So now there's only a handful of companies that are even doing street sweeping. So if we get council's approval early and we get on their list early, we can have street sweeping before October, because in October, to me, it didn't make sense to sweep the streets in October. So that's that one. The other one, leaf collection. To kind of help with leaf collection, I put together a proposal, a grant to buy one of those boxes. You ever seen a box that's on the back of a truck? And then you have this attachment that's behind that and it blows leaves into it. So that would help with the leaf vac. We bought the leaf vac through the same program, and I wrote that grant 17, 18, I wrote that grant. So this is just to help us with leaf collection. And because it's a box sitting on a truck, we can take the box off the truck and then use the truck for other things. Whereas now the leaf vac truck can only be used to vac leaves. So we would love to do that. We gotta walk before we can run, crawl before we can walk. We would love to get there though. Yes, I love what they do. We used to play softball in the Cleveland Heights section, and it would be right there, and the residents would just come pick up whatever they want. So we're getting there. The last piece on here, I did write the grant. I'm still waiting for Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District to get back to me on the grant. And that is a grant to take out fuel storage tanks. So many of you may not know, we had 2 tanks out here. We have tank at Eddy Road and a tank below ground at Eddy Road. And then we have a tank at the firehouse, right? So you didn't know. And one of the things I didn't know until last year is that we pay an annual fee to have these tanks underground. And the tanks haven't been used in over 15, 20 years, right? Now, I remember when I was on council, they decommissioned the above ground tank on Eddy Road. Now we're paying money for these tanks and not using them. So I wrote a grant again to the sewer district to have these tanks removed. And I got my fingers crossed that they will allow us to do that, right? And if they do, we can take them out and then we won't have to worry about any environmental contaminants, gas leaking into the soil. Okay, any questions on that? So I actually met the guy named Bob who was instrumental in starting putting the fish in these ponds. And it was so that they could take Boy Scouts and then teach them how to fish. Now, unfortunately, if you ever watch the duck pond, there's about 5 guys. They suck all the fish. And I'm just like, okay, man, that's just not right. Right. And they haven't trained the Boy Scouts in years, but that's one of the initial things that they were trying to do with the fish, to bring the Boy Scouts to teach them how to do it. And yeah, things in East Cleveland sometimes don't always work out, but we can keep working and get it there. Right. I would imagine all of that, all of the above, as well as bringing in the EPA to do further testing I'm sure you're familiar with what happened years ago with the ducks and the fish, right? And the end result of what they told me happened was more than likely some lawn weed and feed upstream that when it rained, it got in there, that they didn't believe that anyone had poisoned the fish or anything like that. But of course, the news had it like somebody, like there's this evil guy. Yes. Yeah, not so. But I would imagine all of that is going to happen. Remember, the Metro Parks are rated the #1 park management company in the country. So they do an A+ job, right? And there's a study. I don't have the study to give to you. Maybe McGregor could give you the study, but there was a study done on the Metro Parks taking over this park. Okay, so I'm gonna try to go real quickly through safety, and then I'm gonna bring up Mel to go over CDBG. Safety first. Our fire chief is gone. So many of you remember a couple years ago, we've been working on this master lease to bring in an ambulance and 3 salt trucks, right? Last year, we've been working on this since 1920. We've been working on this back and forth with council. Last year, we were able to get council to pass the legislation when Nate Martin became president to allow us to go into a master lease to own these vehicles. So there were 3 salt trucks, 1 ambulance, right? All the paperwork's in. We went back to the fiscal commission. They said, yes, we signed the loan from the banking institution. Only 1 of the trucks actually started production, and that was the ambulance. The salt trucks, none of them began production. And for those of you who have been with us, you'll remember we have ordered trucks over the years, whether Chevys, Fords, that were flat out canceled. Flat out canceled. So they actually did that with the salt trucks. And then the salt truck, the legislation, because it's bid on by the state or by different agencies, the legislation expired. So the price is no more good. So I had to go get new pricing. As it turns out now, I'm gonna come to council and ask them to approve 1 or 2 salt trucks, right? And the ambulance, I wish the chief was here, he could tell you himself, the ambulance has had a price increase of $70,000. 73, thank you, Will, $73,000 price increase at the mercy of the market, right? We're gonna say, okay, send us what you made. That was a joke. We can't take what they've made because it's not complete. And so we're gonna be looking at losing 1 or 2 salt trucks by the time it's said and done. And the funniest thing about it is the loan that we signed with the bank is in effect, but the loan doesn't start until we take possession. So the loan is there, we haven't taken possession of anything, so we haven't started the payments. And then I have ECPD collective bargaining. Many of you know it's been a challenge negotiating the contracts with police and fire. We did get a new contract with police. We got a new contract with fire. And I don't know why council has approved the fire and not the police. Or did they approve, Mike, did they approve the fire contract? Council? Okay, so and I don't know why the police contract is still laying out there, needing their approval. It is a different president. Okay, so that concludes that. Let me briefly mention the ECFD, it's overtime at back pay. That's just a lawsuit that's finally ran its course, and it goes back to 2014, 2015, and it is over with at this point. We just need to pay them, and thankfully the firemen have allowed us to pay them over 3 years. So that needs to be approved. Yes, so that is a company that wanted to write different grants for us to bring in going green stuff. And we said, yes, we'll take your help, knowing that we, don't fully understand it here in the city, and we need as much help as we can get around that. So I think I'm gonna move the agenda. Are there any more questions for our engineers, OHM and or Cleveland Water? If not, I don't, unless you guys want to hang around, you don't have to. I see you sitting there, so. Okay, you're good. Well, at any time, I just wanted you to know that. I'm gonna bring up Melran, if you want to talk about CDBG. Let's give them another round of applause. Thank you. Again, you can never have too much information.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out.
Would you want broadband or fiber optics coming in to the city of East Cleveland, especially I do remember you saying businesses, but also mainly for the residents? There is no more, what technology center on Hayden, because that library is closed. What kind of programs can we offer? Because there still seems a lacking. There's just needed educational services, maybe, and learning how to operate, better navigate the.
So if I could, let me just see if I
And
can't
here's what I
restate
know-
some of that question.
Okay, because you,
Yes,
so.
proud.
Yes, but at
Wow.
the same token, you succeeded, so what is, I guess the question is, we want more to succeed.
And I agree with you. And we are in a position to provide more. So one of the things that the pandemic has highlighted, and that is the digital divide that happens here in this city and cities across the country, just like ours. So ARPA has that in there. They literally want you to spend the money on closing the digital divide. One of the things that we know, businesses will locate somewhere where there's fiber, where they're guaranteed high-speed internet access, cable internet access, wired, not Wi-Fi. So with that in mind, we're looking at going up and down Euclid and then up Noble, keeping in mind that on Euclid Avenue, close to Euclid Avenue, up Noble, close to Noble, we will attract different service providers to then lay fiber another 10 or 15 feet to then get to the end user, which is called the final mile. One of the things, the middle mile being owned by a municipality, and what we're looking at is the middle mile, is it forces competition and often brings down pricing. Because then that middle mile is owned by, say, the city. It's gonna be managed by somebody else. But then if you want to plug into it in your Spectrum, or if you want to plug into it in your AT&T, then you have to compete for the end user to then justify you plugging in to the middle mile, to take it to the last mile. So that's what that is. So we're hoping that this will spur that business, right? Competition, and then lower prices and increase the quality of the product. So that's the best answer I could give you for the programming, understanding that the library and the schools are separate branch, and we don't run those. So they do a pretty good job. In fact, they do a fantastic job with Carlos Latimer, who is also a Shaw High grad. right? He's a short high grad. So that's all I can really tell you about our end of it, trying to work with them to bring the fiber along. Okay. Thank you, Mel.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm laughing a little bit because I got some of my colleagues in here making sure that I be brief and be seated. So I'm going to go through this as fast as I can, but I want to make sure we all have a good understanding. OHM has spoke about Forest Hill and the water work that's going to have to be done there for us, and we have legislation for that that's affecting how that's going to get paid. We talked about it this morning in cabinet a little bit, but I want to make sure that we address it so we understand what we're looking for council to do and what we might look for council to have to do in the future to make sure that we finish paving Forest Hill. The water and the underground work has already been done. It's up to us now, the city, to complete the resurfacing of that. We had a bid from Vandra for $225,000 to do that. They were concerned because they did work on the other streets of Terrace, Third, Delmont, and Page. They hadn't got to this part yet. They completed the work, but they weren't able to be paid in full for doing that work because we had to get a substantial change. And to explain a little bit about CDBG, we have the money. We got more than enough money to pay them to take care of it. However, as a checks and balance, HUD requires that when we go over a line item by more than 25%, we have to do what is called a substantial change. That just means that we have to let the public know what we're doing with the money so no one can say they're shifting money, doing things that they don't know about. And so what that means is we have to put it in the newspaper and tell everybody what we were doing with the money. We were just shifting the money, making sure that we paid for the overages. What made the project go over for the streets? One was council passed legislation to do the streets so late in 2021, we didn't want to rush up against the asphalt plants closing. So we pushed the project to the spring. We had no idea that COVID would happen. And so with COVID, the prices went up. As the gentleman that was up here from the water department spoke about, he said that the price of materials went up. So we had to pay for that cost going up. The streets were in worse condition than we could have imagined. Delmont was in real bad condition. Every time we milled it, that means you take off a layer of asphalt, the bricks underneath were crumbling. The sewers were crumbling, the manholes. So we had to do the repairs to that. On 3rd Street, the residents didn't like the fact that we were doing a portion of the street. So they talked to their council person and they wanted their whole street done. So 3rd Street went from being 130,000 up to 175,000. But we got all of 3rd done. And I think it was better, but we were trying to be fiscally responsible in the beginning. So this legislation is 0723 that is before council that we need for them to pass in order for us to finish paying Vandra so they'll feel good about moving forward and resurfacing Forest Hill. So that's the one piece of legislation that we have before council and community development. The second piece that we want council to consider is under resolution 0623 and 0823. So what that basically is, we got money in community development under CDBG CV. We had that money to come in and it was for making sure that we address COVID concerns. So as we got the money, we put before council different ways that we would spend the money. We did the pantry, which the mayor took initiative with the chief of staff to make sure that many residents got food. We did economic development. And we had in there part to do the MLK Civic Center doing renovations to it. A big part of that was rental assistance. We partnered with a lot of other communities to let Cleveland Housing Network provide the rental assistance because we don't have the staff capacity here for staff to give rental assistance to all the residents and make sure that they're served. COVID is ending. So what we want to do is move that money away from rental assistance before it expires and put it to use in doing some of the repairs to the MLK Center. But we're not leaving residents alone because just recently we had a public meeting last Wednesday where we introduced our application to HUD. We gave it to the residents first. Then we had a deadline of March 31st to make sure that we got our application to HUD for them to approve. We have in there $400,000 to make sure if a resident need rental assistance, that we have $400,000 through the Home ARC to make sure that's done. So those are the pieces of legislation that this department has before council that we need them to pass so we can move the city forward.
When do they have?
Our spend down for CDBG CV is in September. We have to have 80% spent by that date. As it relates to community development, we are in a workout plan. I just got the letter that they approved our workout plan because we didn't spend enough money in 2022. So they put us in what is called a workout plan for us to make sure that we get the money out to the residents to make sure their needs are met.
Maybe given us why,
I have given explanations in writing. I came before council, I explained it. There's been times when I've explained it and it comes back, they say they don't have enough information. Everybody who's come, I've made sure they've gotten it. The individual they have working for them, Brewer, he came, I gave it to him. So I don't know who else more to give it to make sure that we get this passed. Or they don't understand it. So what we did, I worked with Karen Hood, and we looked at all the money that we could pay. So we paid the contractor up to the amount of the substantial change. So we were able to cut them a check. Right now, we have a good relationship with that contractor where they're willing to move forward to look at doing Forest Hill. But we're gonna have to make sure and see what that price comes back at after change orders. Vandra Brothers, Vandra. Yes, ma'am.
Cutting, rock holes, funding that we get to keep our community. Does that come from your department?
No, ma'am.
Is there any way that, is there any threat? What's losing all of the help that we've had in the last couple of years? You see the tree cutting, getting in brown hole, lighting, just. Is there paint programs, are they still in existence?
So the paint program does fall under this, and we're looking to do a number of them this year. Right now, we're okay. Legislation wouldn't stop that unless they don't pass what's going to come before them soon is the 2023 action plan. Right now, we have enough funds from prior year to do some residents this year, but we're always planning ahead moving forward. So if they don't pass the 2023 action plan, then yes, it would affect not only those services, but the streets can't get funded because that's part of it. Public services. So yes, not passing legislation in the future would have an effect on some of those programs. So right now, they don't have that resolution. We just had our public meeting last Wednesday, the 29th at 5:30. So in that meeting was a dual meeting. We had the home art where we presented to the residents the home art application along with the action plan. So we presented and explained the budget on how everything moved forward. So those things were presented. We'll then put legislation together after that to go to council to pass.
So I would like to say, what is wrong? What is the, I mean, why won't they- what is it? Why is that? What did it?
That's,
What is it? What is it? Y'all work together to make sure that everybody running around the time and get everything together, but you got this one entity that's just causing all kinds of problems. I mean, what are they for? They got some jobs, so why won't they do their job? Why won't they pass legislation? Is there any answer?
it depends on if you're asking me personally or you're asking me professionally.
Either way. I'm
So
saying,
the best way that I can answer that is everybody has an agenda. And I don't know what their agenda is. Only thing I can do is move on the agenda of the mayor and the mayor's office on how we move forward. And that's the only thing I can do. I can't worry about what other people do and what they say. You know, my thing is I have to just do my job.
We're lost in the sauce like other cities, they're moving forward and we're still at the same snail pace. We're trying to climb up and. Right. Exactly. Then you have to change it, you have to change it. In November, you're getting a chance.
Okay, for the meantime, like, we see right now, we got a city charter. And I know city charter holds a lot of weight, but there are revised codes in the state and stuff. Like, a lot of things they're doing are unlawful. Can we get like the attorney general or somebody in here to bring something to force this? Because see, we are the employers, they're the employees, they're not working, they're not doing it. We need to get them fired or have, you know, even if it's a takeover so that we can get things done, because otherwise we're not gonna have people come in here. I mean, opportunities are being lost because they're gunning up for tomorrow night to do a clown show. We don't need that no more, you know? So is there something?
So I know
Can we get something statewide to come in here?
His name is Michael Smith. He needs no introduction.
So, what we try to do, and if you look at the history since Brandon King has been mayor, you will see how every dime has been spent. All of how our time has been spent. From doing things that this community has never done before, and doing things to help residents. From taking down dangerous, we saved tons of houses in this community because this community's trees last for about 100 years and the community is 120 years old. We've saved people's homes. We've helped feed people during the biggest pandemic in 100 years. We spent federal funds that helped folks fix their homes when they probably didn't have the money to do anything. $3 million. That resulted probably in about $6 million worth of renovations and repairs to people's homes. We've given out close to $1 million in stimulus. Everything that this administration does is to benefit the residents. Even in our development, we say, hey, we need to make sure that taxes are frozen so that people aren't taxed out of their homes when the new neighborhood is built. We even went to the Ohio Department of Development and said, hey, we need some of that home repair money so that we can help residents who are there in that neighborhood so that they can make their houses, they don't feel bad about not having their driveway done or their roof done or the paint on their house done when they see these new houses coming up. Everything that we do is to benefit the community. We can't make excuses. We can't try to figure out why. We can't spend our time thinking about why council isn't doing what they're supposed to do. We bring this information to you because it's your responsibility to determine who represents you. That's your responsibility. We're not gonna say, hey, vote this person out, vote this person in. We're not gonna do that. What we're gonna do is demonstrate to you that we are providing as much service as we can with the limited resources that we have, and that everything that we do, it is to benefit East Cleveland residents. We're the last office in this building to have, we still got carpet on our floor from the 70s. No, I'm sorry, not the 70s. Gary Norton put it in back in 2010. But, so we still got carpet on our floors. So we still have paneling from the 70s. We've been renovating City Hall. The elevator is the last thing to be fixed. I think we're missing one part. And now you gotta take the elevator up and down the stairs. Because residents need to go up and down these stairs. We don't spend city resources on us. We spend it on the residents. That's what we're here to do, to make sure we can bring you a better quality of life and to bring resources in this community so we can help you build a community. If you see one branch of your government that isn't acting in your best interest, then you have to make decisions. You have to make decisions. There's an election every 4 years. There's an election coming up in November. It is your responsibility to yourself, to elect someone who's going to help build this community and provide services to you. So I would not allow Mel to tell you what the problems are with council. You know what they are. You've just seen them. You just seen them. All we can do is bring you the information. Your presence hopefully will encourage them to pass legislation, and the power is in your hand. There's elections in November. You decide. You decide.
Seems to be, there seems to be some things happening that we don't really know about, like court cases. Administration filing this court case, council filing that court case. We're not really given that information. I don't know who is on council. Who is Eric Brewer?
Right.
Is he a legitimate representative of council? I don't know. I go to talk to people in that room, and I don't know if they're legally there or, you know, he was asked to leave here. Who is council? Can you tell us that?
Yes, we can. And hopefully we have your email, because what we've done, we've created a YouTube channel and an Instagram page, right? And I'm old. Don't laugh at me, I'm old. I don't even do Facebook. Let me say this. We put these explanations, the mayor gives these explanations in video. If we don't have your email, give us your email, we'll send you the link and subscribe. Now, there is a court case going on about who's city council. It is a long, drawn out discussion. I know there's a couple of other things that are on the agenda that the mayor wants to get into, but give me, before does anybody have anything to sign in on? Mayor, give me your email address. Yeah. Go to the link. There's a series of videos talking about the very topics that you're interested in, and you can watch those videos. If you have questions, then you should call. I don't want to, because this is going to take about 15 minutes to explain this, because it has something to do with the recall, how they went and tried to seat a counselor and they couldn't do it correctly. Councilman Martin set a counselor, then they came back and tried to seat another counselor. Then they tried to violate the civil rights of another counselor. I mean, it's just a lot of convolution. It'll take about 15 or 20 minutes.
And Mayor, you want to get to your, no, go ahead. I've only got one thing left. Take your time. You have a telephone.
Yeah,
You have a cell phone.
yeah.
We can send you the link to your cell phone. It makes it a whole lot, and I know, trust me, I do. These young ladies here, it's like an extension of their body. For us, it's like, okay, I got this phone, it does 50 things, and I only do 5 things on it.
My daughter, my
Yeah.
granddaughter. That's it.
That's right. And you don't do text message.
I'm old. And when I say I'm old. I got more time behind me
Okay.
than I got in front of me.
Absolutely. Okay, so if you like, I can get
Oh,
into
they
it.
go like, this. And I'm like, what? Step up a little bit. I'm a dinosaur.
It'll take 15 minutes for me to go through this.
Okay, okay. That's all right.
Okay.
Make it 10, just speak fast.
Okay, let me try to abbreviate,
Okay.
because I love to go through I'm a long way. I would love to go through the 15 minutes, so you go fully understand, it, but I'll go through it.
Can you put it up on that?
Can we pull it up on that? Can we pull up the YouTube?
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
You can do it. You too.
How about that? You should let one of our young ladies show you right on your phone. You just hit one button.
Yeah, right, sure. I don't wanna go.
That's how I learned about it.
So, Mr. Lee, I had a question.
It's right here.
Well, while we're waiting for that, is it okay if I go back to resolution 08?
Please do.
Okay, now, and from my understanding of the CDBG grant came from ARPA?
No,
Where?
the CDBG CD money came from HUD.
HUD, okay. Came from HUD. Okay, so you said we haven't spent all of our money, right? We've only spent 80% of it.
No, we have to spend 80%.
We
by
have,
September.
and we have not even spent 80%.
Right.
We gotta do that by September. Okay, and so you had to do a workout plan to spend up to 80%, correct?
So Cleveland Housing Network has ended the rental assistance program. So they're not doing the rental assistance anymore. So we need to make sure we move that money to another line item, so then it can be spent.
We want to shift it to the middle.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the workout.
You can call it
All
that.
right. All right.
If possible, you can go back.
But it could go back. All right, thank you. Thank you.
There it is, right there.
Is this it?
Filling the Ward 3 vacancy.
Yeah, so I don't know if this link is on actually.
Why are you not investing in Paxton? No, seriously. Why are you not in?
So this is ready? Yeah. Right.
Make it a link sort of thing.
All right, this is filling the vacancy in Ward 3, in which you and I live. You're in Ward 4.
For one of the most.
Okay.
That's the most.
Hello, East Cleveland. This is Mayor Brandon L. King. There has been some confusion surrounding the Ward 3 council seat and who is legitimately appointed as counselor for Ward 3. As you know, the executive branch of our government enforces the law. And as the chief executive of the executive branch, it is my responsibility to ensure that all federal, state, and municipal laws are followed, as well as the charter of the city of East Cleveland. The charter is clear regarding the procedure to fill a vacancy that is created on city council. Section 56 of the East Cleveland Charter states, when a majority of electors vote, and they vote to remove a counselor, and this vote is certified by the Board of Election, the vacancy shall be filled by a majority vote of the remaining counselors. If City Council fails to fill this vacancy within 30 days, the President of City Council shall fill the vacancy by appointment. The actions taken by City Council to fill the vacancy were not consistent with public meeting requirements of the city charter, of the Ohio Sunshine Law, and of the federal open meeting laws and freedom of speech. The recall election of Ernest Smith was on November 8th of 2022. The County Board of Elections certified the election results on November 29th of the same year. As a result of this certification, City Council now had until December 29th of 2022 to fill the vacant seat of Ward 3. On December 20th, councilors Stevenson, Bahoviak, and Gowdy attempted to have an executive session from which they emerged announcing that Latik Shabazz was thereby appointed as Smith's vacancy replacement. This was done in a forum not open to the general public, making it illegal. On December 27th, the councilors attempted to hold another special meeting with the intent to swear in Shabazz without a public notice of the meeting being properly posted as required by our city charter. The only posting of this so-called special meeting was on the Democrats of East Cleveland Facebook page, which does not constitute a posting in a conspicuous place, again, as required by our city charter, thus rendering this meeting illegal. On December 29th, after City Council exhausted the 30-day period as required by the city charter and not filling the Ward 3 vacancy, Council President Nathaniel Martin exercised his right and appointed Ms. Jacqueline Goodrum to fill the Ward 3 vacancy. It was later discovered that Ms. Goodrum did not qualify to be appointed because she is a public employee, and this violates the city charter. On December 30th, Council President Martin legally appointed and then swore in Mark McLean, officially filling the Ward 3 council vacancy. Now, Councilman McLean meets all charter requirements, and he is who the executive branch recognizes as a legitimate councilman of Ward 3. On January 3rd, Councilors Stevenson, Bahoviak, and Gowdy at a regularly scheduled city council meeting reorganized city council leadership, making Corinne Stevenson city council president. And afterwards, these councilors again attempted to swear in Shabazz for a third time, even after council exhausted the 30-day period as granted them by the city charter, and even after the former council president, Martin, legally appointed Mark McLean to fill the Ward 3 vacancy, which happened on December 30th. Unfortunately, none of these meetings held by the councilors Stevenson, Bahoviak, and Gowdy to fill the Ward 3 vacancy had any meeting minutes in which we could refer to, which also violates the city charter, the Ohio Sunshine Law, and the federal open meeting laws and freedom of speech requirements. Today, there are lawsuits filed with the Court of Common Pleas and the Court of Appeals to determine who was properly appointed to fill the Ward 3 vacancy. Until these courts rule, the executive branch, of which I lead, will continue to recognize Mr. Mark McLean as the councilman of Ward 3. As these cases make their way through the court system, I will continue to provide you with the most current and factual updates. That is my duty and promise to you as we continue to rebuild East Cleveland together. Thank you, and God bless you, and God bless East Cleveland.
But I think that still doesn't answer the question. Who is Eric Brewer?
That's another video that we haven't produced. I can talk about it.
Okay,
I can talk
and
about it.
what about Nathaniel Martin?
Okay.
I see him here. Is he on council or is he not on?
So, yeah, so there's other videos that we need to produce. That's not the first one, but that's the first one about council. So let me go to council clerks. The council clerk position requires 3 city councilors to choose that person. 3 recognized city councilors. And Eric Brewer they didn't even take any type of action. He was simply appointed by Council President Gowdy. So she didn't follow the charter at all in giving him that position. Thus, we do not pay him because he hasn't been properly seated as council clerk. So from our perspective, he's a volunteer. You have to, the only way you get that position is if you have majority support by the council. And he doesn't. They didn't even attempt to do it.
Seems like the council is operating under their assumption and administration is functioning according to your assessment.
We're-
And then, so it's not just, you know.
So there are no assumptions. The language is clear
Oh, but yeah, well, then why is it in the courts and they're not telling us that?
because that's where you have to adjudicate it. We're not, I mean, we can't
How
just,
long has that been?
we just can't pull out clubs and start beating people because they refuse to follow the law. Law director.
What we could do is put all the legal opinions on the website, now that I have a connection.
That's where you adjudicate. You don't have an agreement, you go to court. And then when the judge rules, that's what you follow.
Prior to that, the law director is the highest law of the land, of the municipality.
And there are separation of powers. We're not the boss of the legislative branch. They're not the boss of the executive branch or the judicial branch. These are separated powers. When those powers don't agree, then you have to have someone above them both, which is the court, to rule on what the issue is.
So while we're waiting for the court to decide, the law director makes the final decision until the
Yes,
judge decides.
yes. Yes,
Okay. So when there's a council meeting tomorrow, is that a legitimate group meeting?
so you'll see probably 7 people sitting there, but you have to understand, it is council's meeting. They can have anybody they want sitting up there. They can tell anybody, they can ask you to come up and sit up there and cast a vote. But when that vote is cast, we are the enforcers of the law. That's the powers of the executive branch. We will see who cast the vote, and we will only recognize those that are legitimate. So you can vote to your heart content, but we'll never count your vote on any piece of legislation. But when it's a council meeting, that's their space. We don't govern it. We don't manage it. We don't supervise it. They can have, you see the council president sits in the judge's seat, right? Completely out of bounds. Right? This is their space. They can have 10 people up here. They can have Mickey Mouse up there. They can have whomever.
But the fact so they still have to sign off on pushing the money where Yeah, whatever you wanna say forward. so we can get it right.
So whether it's 5 people or 7 people, they refuse to ensure progress is being made. That they're stalling progress. None of these court cases, regardless of who sits there or not, has nothing to do with the fact that they don't want to see progress. If they wanted to see progress, they can have their 7 people there, they can argue and fight with the mayor, but they will pass legislation that's meaningful. We don't personally benefit from the legislation. It's you who benefit from it. So if they had your interest, it wouldn't matter what their issue is with the mayor. If it's a piece of legislation that benefits you as a resident or a business owner or a visitor in this community, they will pass it irrespective of what they think about the mayor. Irrespective. One has nothing to do with the other. If they care about the residents who elected them, they will pass the things that are demonstrable, that demonstrates that it is for the benefit of the community. And then they can call the mayor all the names they want to call him. They can throw eggs at him. But they will pass the legislation that's important for this community to move forward.
So if they don't pass it,
Then it doesn't move forward.
Is Mark coming to the meeting
Yes.
tomorrow?
Yes,
So he attends the meeting.
Yes.
And Mr. Shabazz.
he
does
attends.
Attend also.
The council president allows it, allows that person to come. But when they cast this vote, the only vote that we recognize is Martin, McLean, Gowdy, Stevenson, and Blahoviak. Those are the only, if they have a piece of legislation that comes through and it passes by 3 votes, and it's Gowdy, Blahoviak, and Shabazz, that piece of legislation fails. We won't enforce it.
Let me add to that. So I mentioned earlier, we were with the concerned pastors last Tuesday. Maybe 3 weeks before that, I had Council President Stevens at the concerned pastors down there, and I told him, hey, I swore my oath is to the Constitution, laws and ordinances of the state, laws, ordinance, city charter, right? When in doubt, I deferred to the law director to give me a legal opinion to then put on top to show me how to operate. I told all 3 of the councilors in front of the pastor, I said, if you're really concerned about the city, you want to move the city forward, take 7 votes, right? Because it's in court. A higher court is going to decide who's rightfully on council and who's not. Now that it's in court. Let them decide, but until then, move the legislation forward so we can continue working for the better. Oh, yeah, we'll do that. They're not gonna, well, we'll see if they do. We'll see if they do. But that was my ask to them, to move legislation forward. Take as many votes as you want. I can only accept the 5 recognized councils.
But I heard council say that they fired.
So let me, we have a video on that too. Y'all want to see the video or my explanation? Let me give a quick explanation to that. There are 3 branches of government. They're separate. They each have their own powers. One branch of government can't dictate to another branch of government who they employ. They can't come in and fire someone. You can't pass a piece of legislation saying, Willa Hemmings is no longer, we're vacating her. She has to go. And then the executive branch must follow that. And it's clear in the charter. The mayor has the right to appoint whomever to these positions. And he has the power to remove them. Only he has that power in the executive branch. If you want to run the video, the charter language will pop up. They will say a whole lot of things. They have been saying a whole lot of things. They even were putting on legislation to disband the East Cleveland Police. This was 3 weeks ago. And if they were passed, it would have meant nothing. Because they send it through, because they cast their votes, you have to understand what's legal. We don't expect residents to know it. We expect you to pull the video up, give us a call, read a publication that we're putting out there that will explain these things. There's a video about specifically this issue, where the charter language is very specific. There's nothing ambiguous about it. It says the mayor has the right to appoint all these positions, and he has the right to terminate these positions. That's the powers of the mayor granted to him by the charter, by the people who wrote the charter. So yes, they can say whatever they want to say. They can say, yes, Eric Brewer's your clerk, and Latika's, because they say it doesn't make it fact. That's the problem.
In the meantime, we as people here, I was like, you see, we got these strikes here. Isn't it a way, I mean, it's like the state attorney general is the highest, that's our highest law for here. Can we put something to them to have him come in, because this happened once before, when, Davis was mayor. And Betty Montgomery was, she was the, attorney general there. And she came, because we had a lot of stuff going on like this now. And she came in here and we get him in here to bring some kind of justice here, because, you know, we're looking bad before prospective people that would, you know, invest into this city. We're not getting nothing new. We got the money here. We're losing. We're gonna forfeit because they're messing up. Can he come in here? Can we put something?
I don't know if he would, because there's active cases going on. I doubt if he would step into that muddy water very seriously. I mean, if it was something that we were done prior to the suits, but we're following the proper procedure. If there's a different disagreement between two equally powerful branches of government, we settle it in court. East Cleveland is not the only place where these things happen.
Granted, but we don't have the affordability to lose out on money.
Yes. But that has nothing to do with the agreement between, you can't, sorry.
November, that was saying, nothing at all can happen, nothing like push back and petitions, nothing can happen to November.
Well, really, January 1st.
Well, January 1st, so basically, the habit they read for the past year and a half, we just have to let it roll out until.
I mean, there are some remedies. There are some remedies in the charter, and I don't like to go through these remedies because I don't like to do it. I mean, but there's some recall petitions that are out there. That's your only remedy. Your remedy is to find them an election or use the charter and use that remedy, right? But I just want to, I can't overstate this enough. Whatever issue that they have with this administration, and the mayor in particular, has nothing to do with whether or not they pass the legislation. If you look at this legislation, it doesn't benefit the mayor professionally or personally. It doesn't benefit anybody in the administration professionally or personally. It's all about putting money into the community. And if you are living in this community, it doesn't matter who sends it downstairs, what you feel about that person, weigh it on its value to the community.
Yes.
So then,
So you get that, but the people who have the position of power, they don't get it, so like.
listen, they are the elected representatives. Nothing, they are the elected representatives.
Skills are falling off our eyes. It should be something we as citizens, I mean, we have to enjoy it.
Show up at council meeting and urge
Yes,
them to pass this legislation.
this young lady right here has a question.
What I wanna know, is it legal for this gal to have set?
I don't know. I mean, it's unethical, but I don't believe it's illegal. I don't believe it's illegal. And no way possible, if it was, would we send the police to arrest her out of that chair. We would never take that kind of.
I told you, Judge, that.
We would never do that. We would not push it to a point where, because somebody's sitting in a council president who goes beyond her purview and sits in the chair, even if it was illegal, we wouldn't arrest her. We would not do it. I'm just saying for the whole room, we're.
So disrespectful.
Yeah.
And I don't like it a little.
And that's her new seat now.
Come here tomorrow, she'll have on a robe.
Yes, ma'am.
At what website did you pull up?
YouTube.
Yeah, so YouTube.
Yes.
YouTube
Yes.
and what?
City of East.
Just go to YouTube.
City of East Cleveland. We need a better catch. We do have a link.
We have a link.
Yes. If you give me, anybody want to link these videos, give me your cell phone or your email address. And I will make sure that we send it to your. City of East Cleveland on YouTube.
And while we got a couple more minutes left, for those of you who were here a couple weeks ago, you remember the presentation by Auto Parts Plus.
Right.
right? Their legislation is sitting in council, so if you're coming tomorrow, please urge them to consider Auto Parts Plus. They want to move from next door over to the old Walgreens, and they're looking for some. What are they looking for over there? Additional use. Additional use.
And variant.
Variance. That was.
$50,000.
You don't need a job. You don't need a-
Questions?
No.
Concerns? No, we kept you up for quite some time. That's it. Thank you for coming out. It's good to see you all, as always.